Hi guys, welcome back to Y'all Hearing This. My name is Kay. Thank you so much for coming and joining us over here on Patreon. I am excited to get into this one, so I'm doing another lore video, which is going to be a lot of fun, and we're doing NewJeans today. So I have gone back to Bookish Theories, who I absolutely love her videos. Definitely go check her out and subscribe. And I am not sure if they have like a through line kind of story or if kind of each video has kind of its own concept. I can't really tell from the videos. So we're going to do Attention, Ditto, and Oh My God today, videos on those. She does have some newer ones from their latest release, which I definitely can't wait to check out too. We'll do that in like a part 2. But yeah, anyway, I'm excited. So let's go.
And welcome back to Bookish Theories. In today's video, we'd like to talk about NewJeans, focusing on a little breakdown and analysis of Attention to see what they can tell us about their concept, story, and theme. NewJeans is the much-awaited girl group that will debut on August 1st.
Oh, so this is before they even debuted?
Adore. This is a group created by none other than Minhee Jin, who is the former SM executive director, credited with some of the most iconic concepts from Girls' Generation, Shiny, FX, NCT, Red Velvet, as well as X.
Oh, that's cool.
Director Min is currently the CEO of Adore and has been following this group since its conception back in 2019. Now, if you've been keeping up with the latest content, this is a group comprised of 5 members, all of which were actually introduced with a series of fictional ads, seemingly advertising items with no further meaning. Whether this will be the case or not, only time will tell, because knowing hype, these items might also be part of the group's future lore and storyline. But in the meantime, let's meet the girls and start from there. Now, the first member that we were introduced is Minji. She's been associated with the ad of a new phone, and you might actually recognize her from her cameo in BTS's Permission to Dance. Then we have Hani, who is advertising a ukulele and is the only Vietnamese member of the group. Hein is connected to an ad of new sunglasses meant to protect your eyes. Erin is the member advertising a scrunchie that gives you the chance to express the real you. And last but not least, we have Danielle, who is associated to an ad for face stickers and is the only Korean-Australian member of the group. Now, when it comes to the concept that the girls will follow, we actually need to start from the name itself, because NewJeans has a double meaning that fully represents the goal of this group. Much like clothes that we wear every day, popular music is very much connected to our daily lives and experiences. Because of that, NewJeans has the goal to become an irreplaceable presence in people's lives, like jeans are an article of clothing that never gets old and we want to wear every day.
Oh, that's cool.
To become the new and fresh icons of today's generation, moreover, NewJeans is
and I think they're doing that.
NewJeans, which really expresses the freshness of a concept that is meant to target the younger generations. Now, the focus on today's teens and their experiences will also be the central theme of their debut mini-album, which will fittingly be called NewJeans.
Makes
The EP
sense.
will be comprised of 4 tracks, all of which will have 1 or more music videos, and the tracks in question are called Attention, Hi Boy, as well as Hurt, and
I
Groovy.
didn't know
Now,
that
the official
Attention and Hi
statement
Boy were
explains
co-written.
these 4
Oh, that's
tracks
awesome.
are all connected by a common
By
theme
members.
that is meant to resonate with the younger audience that share the girls' same struggles and experiences. The main topic of the album focuses on the life of today's teens, as well as the young love that people experience at that age. Each song will express this concept by telling a different story that will go beyond the personal narratives, and in doing so, NewJeans will create a universal portrait of the generation that they want to represent. Today we're taking a look at how this concept has been introduced in Attention, because to be honest, Hi Boy has 4 different music videos that actually need a separate breakdown to give them justice.
Oh, I didn't realize there were 4 videos. I think I've only ever seen
Boy really
1.
goes a long way when it comes to exploring the different experiences that the group actually stands for. But in the meantime, let's take a look at Attention and see what story this song has to tell. Now, Attention is the first lead single released out of the album, and according to the press release, it's seemingly something.
I remember watching this MV with B and just being blown away.
Somebody, and instead of hiding it, you embrace this feeling and welcome the excitement by announcing that you're looking for attention. Now, right Right off the bat, the song perfectly conveys the flattering emotion that you feel when you fall in love for the very first time. Everything is new, everything is exciting, and as confusing as it is, it's also something that is worth celebrating. Instead of being ashamed by this new feeling, this young love makes them brave and allows them to express this interest with an open heart. In the song, they want attention because their crush got their attention to begin with, and in the video, this concept is expressed with the first story of the album about a summer love set in the Spanish region of Catalonia. At the beginning, for instance, the video opens with the girls attending the concert of Jean Bonnet, who is a Catalan indie singer and songwriter. The protagonist of this very first installment is none other than Minji, whom we see exiting the toilet and joining the others in front of the mirror. As the girls reach the main hall and start enjoying the concert, we see that Minji did indeed attract the attention of a boy, who in turn starts to cross the room in order to get closer. As he does so, Minji receives a call from her mother, but this call remains unanswered because as soon as she sees the boy, time stops and they immediately fall in love. The room becomes brighter, we got the slow motion going on, and the confetti exploding in the background, so it's safe to say that by the end of the concert, Minji and the boy got each other's attention. This leads us to the second section of the story, which is set on the days following their first encounter and centers around the girls having fun in the summer of their life. As the video cuts to the morning after, we see the girls doing what girls their age do when they are at home. They eat, sleep, listen to music, stay on social media, study on Zoom, but most importantly, they break into choreographed dancing at any chance they get. After a much-needed wardrobe montage, they can leave the house and have fun together around town, but this happens over the span of several days, because if you look closely, their outfits actually change. As the lyrics tell us, however, the love story isn't over just yet, because Minji is destined to run into the boy like serendipity. Sure enough, this is exactly what happens when they go to the sea, and not only Minji and the boys are in the same place at the same time, but both of them have 4 friends along with them. By the end of the video, we see the girls swimming in the sea and the boy himself diving in, thus suggesting the continuation of a summer love that is as dreamy as it is freeing. Now, even if a boy will show us a new set of completely different stories, the one told in Attention focuses pretty much on the emotions of the first encounter. Since it's about 2 people attracting each other's attention, the story portrays that specific moment in time, thus leaving the audience to fill the gaps as they like. As we see in Hi Boy, the story told in that song will have very different messages and outcomes, but for that we'll have to wait and see.
I actually didn't see a video for Hi Boy on there.
And if you did, please think about liking and subscribing. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Alright, I think Ditto is up next. Yeah. Which, I know I've seen one of these MVs, but I don't think I've seen both.
Hello and welcome back to Bookish Theories. In today's video, we'd like to talk about NewJeans' Ditto, focusing on a little breakdown and analysis of the lyrics, side A and side B, to see what they can tell us about the story told in the videos. Ditto is a song written by Minji herself that expresses the emotions of a person who wishes for their loved one to reciprocate their feelings. In this pre-release, NewJeans reinterpret the Baltimore club dance style in a fresh yet nostalgic track. Like in their previous songs, the Y2K aesthetic that characterizes their videos is put to good use with a brand new story associated to this release. As we see in a second, the narrative is divided into 2 separate music videos, which are respectively called Side A and Side B. While NewJeans are obviously front and center in the events that take place in the story, the real protagonist this time is a girl named Isu. In both videos, she's played by actress Park Ji-yoo, which you might actually recognize from All of Us Are Dead, Little Women, and other projects. In the story,
is Little Women
Park
like
Ji-yoo's
a
character Hee-soo
remake of
is a young
like Musume
student with an
Alka
apparent
Women?
passion for filmmaking. Well, at first the narrative
One of my
seems to
favorite
focus
books
on
of
a
all time.
friendship with the 5 members of NewJeans. Soon enough we discovered that this is not really the case, because the story that we are being presented here is more about loneliness than anything else. You see, in many respects, the narrative chosen for this song will be able to resonate with many people. It's all about growing up, finding a way to cope with the struggles that come with it, and eventually realizing that the comforting fantasy that you choose to escape in might actually be the very thing holding you back. Full Full of eerie details, nostalgic touches, and symbolic imagery, Ditto tells us a story of growth that is somehow both heartwarming and heart-wrenching. So without further ado, let's start from side A and see what's going on. Now at the beginning, the video opens with a woman entering a room. The lady in question is none other than Hisu herself, whom we meet as a young adult in the process of remembering her past in school. As she opens a box, inside we see some dusty VHSs as well as some wooden bunnies.
Oh,
Right
bunnies.
off the bat,
That's
these are
cute.
that giveaway of who Hisu is supposed to represent.
Right.
Because bunnies are not only the representative animal of the group itself, but also the official name of NewJeans' fandom. To a certain extent, we can say that Hisu is like an embodiment of young fans relying on NewJeans for comfort, and even if at the beginning the video opens by showing us the girl as an adult reminiscing about the time that she spent with them, the very fact that she kept all of that stuff already goes to show how meaningful that connection was. After blowing the dust off the VHS, Hisu pops the tape in the VCR and off we go down memory lane. As I mentioned before, the video initially tells us a story that ends up being very different from the reality that young Hisu lives in, but to be honest, this is important in and of itself. You see, what the tape is showing us at the beginning is Hisu's perspective on the meta, or rather the fantasy that she created in order to escape a difficult reality. In this fantasy, the 5 members of NewJeans are his schoolmates, and all 6 of them are part of a group of friends that always hangs out together. While Hisu is not part of the dance team, she's basically the videographer of the group, and she's in charge of recording the girls not only as they practice, but also as they live their everyday life. She records them while they dance in the gym, on the roof, in the yard, and in the classroom. She's with them when they mess around in school, and when they have fun together in their spare time. And even if Hisu herself is never included in the recording, NewJeans are generally nice to her, and they sincerely treat her like a friend. Now this dynamics are actually very interesting here, because to a certain extent this can be seen as a representation of the relationship between fan and idol. In the video, for instance, we see that Hisu is included in the friend group but she's not part of the dance team, and the same can be said for fans who are part of the community but not part of the groups themselves. While in some parts of the video Hisu and the girls interact face to face, moreover, the majority of their interactions actually takes place through the lenses of the camera, with her being on the side of the audience and NewJeans being on the side of the idol. On top of that, the relationship is mostly based on their shared passion for performing arts, and like a fan with an idol, every time that the girls dance, Hisu loves it because their dance is a genuine source of happiness. When she is with them, Hisu always smiles. She doesn't feel left out, but rather she feels included and a part of something bigger. She feels loved, accepted, understood even, and this is very similar to the bond that fans might create with their idols. While there is often a camera separating them, the comfort and happiness the fans feel when consuming the content is very real, so much so that this bond can help people overcome the pain and struggles of their everyday life. In certain cases, however, this positive and temporary escape can develop into something different, because when this connection becomes the most important one in your life, it's very easy to get lost in a delusion that is not real. At that point, the healthy distraction that makes us happy can become the very thing that makes us spiral, and as it turns out, this is exactly what happens to Hisu in the story. As we see in both videos, the girl is having a hard time in school. Inside B we see her crying, and throughout the story we can also notice that she's wearing a cast because she broke her arm. While the narrative doesn't explain what happened, her injury might be an indication that she might be a victim of school violence, and if this is the case, then the escape provided by NewJeans would also be a way for her to feel less lonely, scared and isolated. Since in the video we never see her interacting with anybody but them, it's likely that Hisu doesn't have any friends, so instead of venturing out into the world to find some, she essentially ventures in her imagination to create a scenario where NewJeans become her BFFs. If in reality the cast remains white because there's nobody there to sign it, in her fantasy the girls decorated like friends do. Then they go on bike rides together, they play with makeup, they have fun, and Hisu is happy because when she's lost in this fantasy everything is great. The truth of the matter, however, is that everything is not great, because this fantasy isn't real and it's only leading her further away from reality. If you look closely, we as the audience never fully see Hisu's face, and this is because most of the times she's hiding behind the camera. The very device that helps her connect with her fantasy friends is also something that acts as a wall that protects her from the outside world. The camera keeps her from getting seen and getting appreciated by real people, so it's like a vicious cycle circle, if you will, because the distraction that makes her happy is the very thing keeping her from finding happiness in real life. In the video, we see that the only person who is seemingly able to crack this wall and break the illusion is a boy played by actor Choi Hyun-wook. In the story, he plays the role of a fellow student who seems concerned about Jesus' declining mental health, and throughout the narrative we get the sense that the two of them might actually have feelings for one another. This plot point actually brings us right back to the theme of the song itself, because Tito is all about a person who has strong feelings for somebody and wishes for them to feel the same way. In the story, Hisu and the boy seem mutually interested in one another, so much so that even if at the beginning she's completely focused on the girls performing, he still manages to get her attention by breaking through her little world. When his face first appears in the recording, we see that Hisu gets very flustered and immediately moves the camera away to focus back on the girls. Now this is much more significant than what it seems, because as we see later in the video, when Hisu uses the camera, she's lost in her little world and doesn't really register the real people around her. When she's in the class, for instance, everybody's looking at her, but Hisu doesn't really see it because she's so deep into her hallucination. The real people are nothing more than background characters. In the gym, however, the boy's face manages to break through. He pops into focus despite being in the background, and this is a major breakthrough that will help her moving forward. While throughout side A we see that Hisu is very much absorbed by the fantasy that she built. Whenever she puts down the camera, the boy is there, and even if at first she looks away, his presence slowly draws her back to reality little by little. Inside A, however, we see that for the moment the fantasy wins, which is also evident by the scene of the rain. When Hisu is getting out of school, the girls are with her, and even if she has an umbrella, she chooses not to use it so that she will not be the only one to stay dry. This is a dead giveaway that at this point she's still lost in her delusion, because as we see at the end, the girls are not really there, but she chooses to endure the storm anyway. Hisu refusing to use the umbrella in the storm is also very symbolic here. It metaphorically means that even if she has the tools to overcome the difficulties in her life, she still chooses not to use them to follow a fantasy that yes is comforting, but doesn't really help her getting out of the storm. This is because the fantasy gives her a feeling of belonging that she doesn't really have in real life. Like in the song, Hisu just wants to be liked. She wants to love and care for people, and wants these people to love and care for her in return. Like we see with the boy, in reality achieving this task is much more complicated. It can be intimidating and even scary to put yourself out there, because even if you want people to like you back, there is always the chance that they could reject you. In her fantasy instead, NewJeans are always there for her. They never leave her in doubt, because Hisu likes them and they like her back. As comforting as it is, however, Hisu needs to let go of that fantasy if she wants to live a real life in the real world, and by the end of side A, we see that the illusion is finally starting to break. After a long day spent with her imaginary friends, and after painting Minji's nail with her pink polish, Hisu happily falls asleep with the girls. While sleeping, she has a dream where she's standing on the edge of a snowfield, and in the distance she spots a doe that looks at her straight in the eye. Once again, this is a very symbolic scene here. In this case, the doe almost feels like an extension of Hisu herself. It's like her spirit animal, if you will, her guide, which appears in a frozen field in order to lead her towards the next step of her journey. On a metaphorical level, both the doe and the snow are symbols of innocence and purity, but having a snow dream often marks the beginning of a spiritual awakening. In turn, the doe is also an animal associated to many different qualities, among which there is also intuition and self-awareness. Hisu dreaming of a doe in the
This video is like so much deeper than I thought.
An awakening. She has to wake up not only from the dream itself, but also from the fantasy that she created. And sure enough, this is exactly what happens next. As she wakes from her dream, Hisu is alone, and not because the girls left, but because they were never there to begin with. The cast they drew on that very afternoon is clean, and the nail that Hisu painted thinking it was Minji's was hers all along. At this point, the video finally reveals the heartbreaking reality that Hisu was a very lonely girl, and the happy memories that she shared with the girls were only real to her. This leads us right into side B, which not only gives us a new perspective on the entire situation, but also portrays the next step in Isu's journey. Now that the truth has been revealed, the video begins with a side-by-side comparison between reality and fantasy. The difference between side A and side B, however, is the point of view that we are being offered. If in side A we kind of saw the truth from the perspective of the people around her, now we're finally looking at Isu's perspective where she realizes the truth. Now that the illusion is falling apart, the recording begins to glitch, so the videos of the girls suddenly disappear to show the reality that she was actually recording all along. Now Isu finally sees the empty halls, the students looking at her in disbelief, and at this point she doesn't smile anymore because reality is finally catching up to her. In the next scene, Isu is crying, and even if the girls are by her side trying to comfort her, this time she's not really acknowledging them. The person she acknowledges instead is the boy, who in turn looks very concerned for her well-being. Overwhelmed by her two worlds colliding, Isu momentarily decides to run away from both. She stands up and runs away, leaving behind both the girls representing fantasy and the boy representing reality. Now at this point, the NewJeans are very concerned too, because even if they're basically an extension of Isu herself, they're sentient enough to be worried about what's going on. In this context, they're almost like her spirits, not in the sense that they're dead, but rather in the sense that they're a manifestation of her wishes and emotions. They're happy when she's happy, and they're sad when she's sad. They basically say ditto, because in a sense, that version of them exists because she created them. Now I say a version of them because I actually think that in the next scene we get to see the real NewJeans, that is, the real life girls in the story that Isu used as an inspiration to create their imaginary friends. While she's walking alone in the evening, Isu comes across the 5 girls dancing in an empty parking lot. As she watches them dance, this moment overlaps with the fantasy that Isu invented, but when we get to the scene where the girls drew on the cast, we see that in reality this never took place. In the reality of the story, the girls really exist, it's just that Isu is not really close with them, so she kinda created a version of them that is always by her side no matter what. To a certain extent, this also fits with the comparison that I drew with the relationship between fan and idol. Real life NewJeans really exist somewhere in the world, and so do the rest of the idols in the industry. Even if fans don't know them personally, they can connect with them through the camera, and in certain cases, if they really want to meet them, even by creating a version of them with their imagination. In a similar way, Isu made up her own NewJeans when she needed them the most, but in her case, the illusion took over her life completely, so now it's time to do something about it. As I mentioned before, Isu is finally awakening, and the final step before coming back to reality is to rip the band-aid off and sever the connection once and for all. As we see in the video, the girl goes back to the roof, and this time she takes the camera and drops it. When it crashes on the pavement, the fantasy is destroyed, and in a scene that is both beautiful and haunting, the girls that she imagined eventually disappear. As they lift their arms in the air, their bodies start to blend in with their surroundings, and in a final embrace, the 5 spirits become absorbed by the world and become one with nature. After fulfilling their role, Isu doesn't need them anymore. She's ready to let them go, and this is evident by the second scene of the rain, where this time Isu opens the umbrella and ventures under the rain on her own. Instead of hiding in a fantasy, Isu chooses to face the storm and overcome it with the tools that she has, and even if it's not easy, she's not looking back. In the next scene, for instance, we see that in the evening, Isu receives a phone call from Minji, and this is actually a very interesting scene. You would think that since Minji is calling her, it was all real, until you actually remember that NewJeans communicate with fans with an app called phoning that is literally structured like a phone. Whenever the girls go live, for instance, the service is designed like a video call, so if we apply the same concept to the scene, Minji's call can be seen as a metaphor for the times these idols connect with fans via apps and social media. In the last few years, it has become very common to receive notifications if idols use certain apps, and like we see in the videos, this can feed on the illusion that they are your friends even when they are not. As we see in the video, Isu is very sad to ignore the call from Minji, but despite of that, she stays consistent and doesn't reply. This is because in that moment of her life, she needs a clean cut. She can no longer indulge in that fantasy because that is the only way that she can fully come back to reality. By the end of the story, Isu succeeds. We see her walking home with the boy, and after the dog confronts her one last time, the animal eventually walks away because her awakening is finally complete. At this point, the end of side B brings us right back to the beginning of side A. Isu is now grown, and she's back to reopen a box full of memories that she left behind. When she plays the tape, the video shows us that this time the recording includes the 5 members of NewJeans, NewJeans. And even if this final scene seems to contradict everything that I just said, in reality this is not really the case. As I mentioned before, the point is not that the girls weren't real, but rather that the fantasy wasn't. In a similar way, idols exist in the content that you watch, but don't really exist in whatever scenario you might make up in your mind. In the story, Hisu lost sight of this distinction, so she had to sever the connection in a very drastic way. This, however, doesn't really erase the genuine feelings that she felt for the girls, so now that she's a bit older and mature, she can go back and reconnect with those videos that made her so happy in the past. Even if she had to let go, the girls will always be there for her, and sure enough, in the final scene, Hisu indulges in a little fantasy and reunites with the friends that she loved so much. The message of this beautiful story seems to be that even if these types of parasocial relationships might not be real, the comfort and happiness that they provide very much is, and can actually last for a very long time. Despite of that, however, people have to be careful not to lose sight of reality, because especially in moments of struggle, the fantasy that gives you joy can also make you lose yourself in your own mind, which quite obviously defeats the original purpose. All in all, your idols will always be there to sing, dance and cheer you up, so don't forget to live well and enjoy life. In the meantime, however, I hope you guys enjoyed this video.
That was fantastic, and I really want to go back and watch both of those videos now because, yeah, I can see how it'd be very easy to slip into such a fantasy world. I mean, especially for someone younger, like school age, when, especially someone who may not have as many friends, things like that. When you're older, you kind of have more stuff in your life, your family, possibly partners, kids maybe, a job, this or that, so it's probably like a little not quite as easy. But I mean, there definitely have been times when I feel like I've watched so much content that you almost feel like you know them. I don't think I've ever quite stepped over that line into total Delulu land, but it's a tempting thought, because they do become such a comfort, so that's really fantastic, and I love that they kind of brought that up because I can imagine it's a thing that happens a lot with younger, possibly older people too. I just, you know what I mean? From my experience anyway, I feel like it might be a little harder. Anyway, really like that. Okay, let's get into, oh my God.
Hello and welcome back to Bookish Theories. In today's video I would like to talk about NewJeans' Oh My God, focusing on a not so little breakdown and analysis of the concept and the music video to see what they can tell us about the story so far and its connections to Ditto. Oh My God is a song that talks about the contrasting emotions of a girl thinking about her crush. According to the press release, the lyrics portray an inner conflict in the girl's mind. The song portrays a wish to get close to the boy that she likes, while at the same time also expressing a sense of distance, caution and unfamiliarity in relation to this romance. In the video, this inner conflict is brought to life with a surreal concept blurring the boundaries between fiction and reality. Set in a psychiatric ward, the video portrays NewJeans as mental patients, each of which are experiencing a different delusion. Throughout the narrative, the girls tell us their story and the reason why they're there to begin.
It's funny, I have seen this video and I did not realize
it's more difficult to tell what is real and what is not. Reality gets mixed with illusion, the fictional storyline of the video merges with real life, and the characters of the story interact with people that also exist in our world. In Oh My God, reality is deconstructed and made into something subjective. It's not a matter of what is real anymore, but rather what is real to each of the characters in the story. Now if we take a look at the big picture here, this was also one of the central themes of Ditto, which in turn told us the story of a girl named Hisu. In side A and side B, Hisu was portrayed as a young student who got lost in a delusion where she imagined the members as her friends. Desperate for a way to cope with a lonely reality, reality, Hisu hid behind the camera and made up her own reality where she was surrounded by loving friends. As I mentioned in my Ditto breakdown, Hisu's story can be seen as a metaphor for the dynamics between fans and idols, or even better, when these dynamics get a little bit out of control. While idols can provide a positive distraction that can give you comfort and happiness, when somebody spends too much time in this fantasy and forgets to live, this positive interaction can become the very thing keeping you from living well. After watching Oh My God, I still stand with this theory, but I also think that this is just the tip of the iceberg. You see, when it comes to the lore itself, there is still quite a lot to unpack. Since my last video, for instance, Hisu got her own YouTube channel under the name Ban Hisu.
Oh,
The name
really?
itself is
That's
very
cool.
interesting here, because depending on how you pronounce it, Banisu literally sounds like bunnies, thus reinforcing the idea that the girl is a representation of fans themselves. On the channel, Hisu expands on the lore by posting videos of the girls mostly dated 1998 and 1999, and as we see in a second, some of these videos also reference the delusions that we see in Oh My God. Even more importantly, Hisu does appear in the video, but this time as a background character. We see her holding a bunny sitting in the back, she's mentioned in Annie's story, and at the end she complains on Twitter about the video itself because it's way too complicated and weird. This tells us two things. Number one, that Hisu would not subscribe to my channel, and number two, that Ditto and Oh My God are definitely connected through the same story. In order to understand what this story is about, however, we have a lot to unpack, so let's start from the top and see what's going on. At the beginning, the video opens with the girls having a group session in the psychiatric ward. The doctor is played by actor Kim Joo-han, and in the video he wants the members to tell each of their stories. The first one that we see is Hanni, who ended up in there because she thinks that she is an iPhone. As she recalls her delusion, we see her running inside of the phone in a desperate attempt at finding the alarm. In a nice touch, we also see that she's dressed like the lady Steve Jobs. She got the
That's funny.
glasses, the black turtleneck, the blue jeans, which is exactly what he wore throughout his entire career. In her account of the events, Hanni tells us that at first she was very confused about who and where she was. She began to question her identity, and she became very confused about the difference between the real her and what people said about her. When she finally found the alarm button and smashed it or whatever, we can say that Hanni had a literal wake-up call, because at that moment she realized that she's none other than an iPhone. She exists for you. When you call, she will come at any time and anywhere, and she'll show you anything that you want to see. She will speak for you, sing for you, answer to your every question, and find a way to give you everything that you could ask for. Realizing that makes her ashamed that she was even worrying about her identity. It doesn't matter who she is anymore, because her sole purpose is that to serve you. As Annie looks at Minji through the lenses of the camera and takes a photo of her, Minji then asks if she's Siri, to which Annie replies in Siri's voice that she's correct. Now this part here is very surreal, because even if the scene is quite funny, in more ways than one, what she's saying can be compared to how some people think idols should behave. More often than not, their job is considered as a calling, a higher purpose, and more often than not, their own needs and individuality are ignored for the sake of what people want. Being an idol is like being a phone, in the sense that people like Hisu, for instance, rely on them for many different things. They are more than singers and dancers. They are a source of emotional support, entertainment, company, and sometimes even education and change. This underlying metaphor is made even more evident because in the phone, Hanni tries to contact Hisu, but Hisu doesn't reply. As I already mentioned, Hisu is an embodiment of bunnies, so Hanni literally phoning her is a way to connect with you. Metaphor aside, however, this part is also connected to the lore itself, because the reason why Hisu doesn't reply is actually explained in the YouTube channel. In the video from December 29, 1998, Hisu recorded the girls doing PE as they play around on the chairs. That is the same scene that we saw back in Ditto, and in the description, Hisu reveals that on this day, Hanni finally bought a phone. The problem is that Hisu thinks that she gave her the wrong number, so oh my god,
that's
Hisu
funny.
probably doesn't reply because of that. Now, to be fair, in 1998, iPhones didn't really exist yet, but then again, neither did YouTube. This could mean that the entire Hisu timeline might not be as reliable as we think, and this idea might also be confirmed by the latest videos on the channel, which in turn are dated 2023. Now, in order to explain this sudden change, we can actually rely on Oh My God, because as I mentioned before, it seems that Hisu is in the video as one of the other patients in the ward. At the beginning, for instance, we see her sitting with other people doing the group session, and when the girls wander around at night, we see that she's also there holding the bunny. To further mess with our heads, when the camera cuts, the background changes to confuse us even more. Sometimes the girls are alone, and sometimes only the bunny is there. Sometimes Hisu is with the girls, and sometimes sometimes she's by herself, and we don't really know what is true and what is not, which is kind of the point that the video is trying to make. You see, considering what we saw until now, it seems that Hisu might be a patient in present day, who is creating her own world in the 90s by taking inspiration from what she sees in real life. The boundaries between reality and delusion, however, are very blurred, because in the world, the delusions of different people collide into one. In Minji's case, for instance, her delusion is thinking that she's a doctor and not a patient. In her fantasy, she's actually curing the other members, so much so that in the video we see her perspective as she observes them doing their episodes. The first that she tries to help, for instance, is Annie, whom we see talking to the wall while thinking that she is the phone. Approaching her with a lot of care, Minji interrupts her episode and momentarily brings her back to reality. Then she appears in Hane's subway fantasy, staying by her side while she's lost in her own mind. She approaches Danielle while she laughs at the white nose on TV, and then she intervenes when Erin is drawing on the ambulance. Every time that she interacts with one of the members, they end up in the ambulance one after the other, but by the end, Dr. Minji approaches Minji herself, so she ends up in the psychiatric ward together with the others. Next up we get to Hane, whose delusion was actually foreshadowed on the YouTube channel a few days before release. In the video from December 28, 1998, Hisu complains that these days Hane's princess syndrome is getting severe. It's so severe, in fact, that she keeps asking where she can buy a glass slipper, which is something that makes Hisu very mad. In Oh My God, we see Hane's princess syndrome in full effect, because her delusion involves a love story where she is the main character.
I mean, who doesn't want that, right?
Book, Hane crafted a fantasy where the different chapters are inspired by different movies and stories that she likely heard in real life. In this fantasy, she's obviously a princess, and her love interest is none other than Danielle. As the index suggests, this love story begins with a reference to the most iconic scene from La Bombe, which is a very famous French movie from the 80s about a 13-year-old girl falling in love for the first time. The scene in question takes place during a party where the girl is approached by her crush who would like to dance. Since the party is playing rock and roll, the boy puts headphones on her head playing a romantic song they can slow dance to. Fittingly enough, the lyrics of this song talk about dreams becoming the reality, which is exactly what happens to Hane in Oh My God. In the second chapter of the love story, her delusion evolves into Cinderella. While she is slow dancing with Danielle, her Apple Watch tells her that it's midnight and it's now time to go. When she runs away, she loses one of the glass slippers, which is later found by Danielle, and since the spell is now broken, Princess Hane has to go back home using the subway, which is why chapter 3 references a movie with the same name. In chapter 4, her story takes a turn for the worse. After enjoying the night, Hane now becomes the little match girl, which is the story of a young child who dies of hypothermia while trying to sell matches on New Year's Eve. Like in the original story, we see that Hane lights the matches in order to stay warm, but in the video she is not alone, because Erin appears next to her holding an apple. Following the book, we are now getting to chapter 5 of the story, where Hane suddenly becomes Snow White. In this context, Erin plays the role of the evil queen in disguise, tempting her with the apple, and when Hane bites into it, we see that she's poisoned and considered dead. At this point, the story goes from Snow White to Sleeping Beauty. In a desperate attempt at saving her life, Danielle is a modern-day Prince Charming riding a bike instead of a horse. She wants to reach her to wake her up, but Hane's love story doesn't have a happy ending because her fairy tale ends with the Revenant. Instead of being awakened because of a true love's kiss, Hane wakes up at the sight of Danielle's body killed by a bear. Her story ends with the animal standing next to her deathbed, and when we go back to the session, Hane is now a ghost looking sadly at a teddy bear. These visuals imply that in her story, Hane was eventually killed by the bear, so now she is not only a princess, but rather a ghost princess.
I mean, that is a lot of story.
Erin, who in turn experiences a delusion where she thinks that she is a cat. In her section, she introduces herself by showing a doodle of a cat, and even if the other members are a bit weirded out by her eating cat food,
maybe I haven't seen this video because I don't remember any of this. Maybe I watched like a dance
because her
version.
delusion connects us right back to Hisu's story in Ditto. Back in Side A, for instance, Hisu did have a grey cat, and in one of the recordings, she actually called Erin by the nickname Kitty Kang. Back then, Erin refused to identify herself as a cat, but in the video she interacted with the grey cat the same way the girls interact with her in the MV. Once again, this parallel implies that the fantasy that Hisu created was somehow inspired by what she saw and heard in the reality of the psychiatric ward. The thing is that this reality is very dynamic. The video doesn't give us an objective truth because every patient has their own view of reality, and depending on their perspective, each of them is real in their own right. In the next scene, for instance, the video focuses on the doctor from the beginning.
Oh, he's
Only that
from
now
It's
the
Okay to
doctor
Not
is
Be
one of the
Okay.
patients. In turn,
Such
he
a
sees
good
the girls
show.
in many different ways. He sees them as
All the
patients,
episodes are
then
up
as
if you'd like to watch it.
children. First they're there, and then they're not. Then we see the teddy bear, and then the girls transforming into different variations of the same group sitting at the table. If his perspective of reality is mind-bending, however, this is nothing in comparison to Danielle's, who in turn tries to convince the others that they are the members of NewJeans and they're actually shooting a music video, which incidentally also corroborates Jesus' delusion on her channel. Now, Danielle's section here transforms the video into an example of metafiction, which is a narrative where the characters of a story are aware that they're characters of a story. Whether we are talking about books, movies, or even comics, this is a style that is usually used to make a statement about the medium itself. The characters break the fourth wall, and we as the audience are reminded that what we are seeing is a work of fiction that is different from the reality that we live in. In a way, metafiction reminds us of the difference between reality and fiction, but since in Oh My God the characters are experiencing delusions, the premise of the story allows for a lot of experimentation. You see, in Danielle's story, fiction and reality are inverted. For us the audience, the girls being patients is part of a story, while the girls being idols in NewJeans is part of reality. In Oh My God, however, it's the opposite, because for the characters the psychiatric ward is their reality, while NewJeans is part of Danielle's delusion. Through her fantasy, these two worlds blur into one, and in the video, Danielle literally breaks the fourth wall in order to prove her point. She shows the others the crew that is shooting the music video, and she even goes to the director in order to ask for help. This man right here, for instance, is none other than Shin Woo-seok. He is the real-life writer and director of the story.
That's cool.
He's the one who created it, but in this context, it's just a figment of Danielle's imagination, like at one point, her character was a figment of his. As Danielle explores NewJeans' career to this point, her account of the truth emerges with attention until the Minji in the video turns around and finally says it's enough. When Danielle's story cuts back to the ward, Minji the doctor puts an end to the group session and takes the girls away. As they leave the room, we see a man grabbing the notepad that Erin was drawing on, and all of a sudden the doodles on the paper begin to appear in real life as well. Now that man that we see at the end is actually Iman Nyon, who is a popular YouTuber and webtoon author. In this cameo we see his perspective of the world that surrounds him, and since he's a cartoonist, the drawings come alive in his imagination. All in all, we can say that this story essentially showed us how relative reality can be, especially when seen through the lenses of different people's minds. In the video, each of the characters has their own view of the world that surrounds them, and on different degrees, each of them uses their imagination in order to either escape or cope with reality. In a sense, Oh My God offers more insight on what Iso might have felt like back in Ditto. In the video, it's very difficult to tell what is real and what is not, and the same thing happened in Side A and Side B, where Hisu was so lost in her fantasy that it was impossible for her to tell the difference. In Oh My God, we almost see reality the way Hisu would see it, and at the end we discovered that she didn't like it at all. After the credits, we see Hisu writing a post on Twitter where she complains about the video that she's in. In this last meta moment, Hisu admits that the video made her uncomfortable because she would prefer that idols would just dance and show their face. This is also coherent with what we saw in the story so far, because on her channel she reveals that the reason why she was recording the girls was actually to shoot a music video. Fittingly enough, back in Ditto, Hisu was recording them while dancing to Oh My God, so maybe all she wanted was to make an alternative MV focusing on the girls' faces and dance moves. Since this music video tells a type of story that seemingly hits way too close to home, Hisu might have made up a scenario where she was recording another one which was closer to her taste and didn't call her out on her behavior. Considering that the story is still ongoing, to know if this is really what happened, we'll have to wait and see. But in the meantime, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please think about liking.
Okay, well that was way more in depth than I thought. And yeah, it does seem like they might have a bit of a through line for lore. It's so funny. I watch these and then I'm like, I need to go back and rewatch all of their videos again. I don't know. That's really cool though. I especially like the Ditto one. And oh my God, apparently I was sleeping during that video. Yeah, I just don't remember really any of that at all. But that's really cool. Oh, that's awesome. I know there was a big uproar with one of their latest songs, ETA. There was some, like some of the advertising for it. People had it, there was a possible connection to a group, actually, funnily enough, talking about attention from Catalonia in Spain, like a terrorist group. Well, so that was interesting. I didn't realize there was a connection there too, that video was supposed to be in Catalonia. Anyway, that's really, really interesting. I love their music already, and this just adds that little extra to it. That's awesome. I love when there's this whole thought out kind of behind the scenes thing to it. So that's really cool. And yeah, I definitely need to go back. Maybe I'll do that when I do like their part 2 for the artist of the week. I'll go back and watch some. I don't know. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I'll definitely do some more. There are a couple more videos from the channel, from Bookish Series on these. So I definitely will get into some more for a part 2 at some point. But thank you so much. Definitely leave me any suggestions you may have for what groups you want me to get into. Love you so much. I'll see you next time. Bye.